So seeing as how it is 7 o'clock, I guess I will call this meeting to order. If we're all set to start the meeting.
Yes, ready to go.
Recording in progress.
Okay, good evening. This is welcome to the Monday, November 25th, 2024 meeting of the Grafton Planning Board. And we have with us, except for me, my entire board is on Zoom. So I will begin by calling the roll of all the Zoom attendees. Bob Hassinger.
I'm here.
Justin Wood.
Present.
Greg Dallamole.
Present.
And David Robbins is present. We also have with us Town Planner Fiona Coughlin.
Present.
And we are expecting Prabhu. Prabhu has another engagement this evening, and he's trying to share his time. We're expecting Prabhu to join us at 7:30.
Yes. Mr. Chair, Natalia's having an issue. She's trying to get on, so she's working on it.
So we expect Assistant Planner Natalia Allward to join us momentarily.
What about our associate?
And we have a new associate, Ray Mead, who is not yet present. Ray informed me that he expects to be joining us around 7:15 or thereabouts. So we will, when he arrives, we will welcome him to the meeting, to the board. And with that, would like to introduce our new office staff member, Jack Henderson, who is also joining us on Zoom.
Hello?
Oh, Jack, welcome.
Not sure if I can get my camera working. I apologize for that. But yeah, it's great to meet everybody.
Good to meet you too. If we promote him to a full panelist, you might be able to do that. I don't know if that's easy for you, Piano.
Oh, yes. Sorry, that was probably my fault. Okay. Yeah. All right, Jack. Let's try that.
There we go. Perfect.
While Jack is getting squared away, I just wanted to. I think most of the board members have had an opportunity to see Jack when they came in to sign some paperwork this week, but just can't reiterate enough how excited we are to have him. How awesome he's been. His first week anniversary. So yeah, it's been great. So thanks, Jack. You're awesome. We're happy to have you.
Thank you.
Welcome, Jack.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I'm excited to work with all of you.
Thank you.
Again, welcome. We
Exciting stuff.
we look forward to a very productive working relationship. And we look forward to our office being better able to handle the workload now that they've got additional resources.
Yes.
Okay, so with that, I'll proceed into the agenda. Our first agenda item, as always, is public input. If there is anybody from the public here, either in the room or on Zoom, who wishes to speak to the board regarding a matter that is not already on the agenda for tonight, now would be the time to raise your hand. I do not see any raised hands in the room or on Zoom, so we will proceed. We have a somewhat unusual scheduling situation here. Prabhu has very limited time available, but we have two public hearing continuations on our schedule. Turns out that one of them, the applicant had requested a continuation to 7 o'clock this evening instead of the usual 7:30. The board granted that, so I think without further ado, I'd like to proceed into the continuation of the public hearing on the request for special permit and site plan approval at 23 Rear and 25 East Streets. So do we have anybody here at this point who is prepared to speak to that?
I don't see the applicant's engineer on yet, and no one is in the room yet. Oh, I have a raised hand. Here.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hey, Tony.
Hi, sorry. So this is Tony Riley. I'm from the town council's office. I noticed on the agenda that this matter was scheduled for 7:30. And normally when the agenda states a specific time, you have to wait for that time until you call a hearing open. Sometimes towns won't put specific times so that they can go out of order, but as this one was on for 7:30, I think you have to wait for 7:30, and that might explain why the applicant is not here, despite them withdrawing their continuation request.
Yes, so
And
seeing as how we don't have anybody else here to speak for the applicant, there's no reason that we should continue the discussion right at this point, so.
Well, interesting point that though, a long time ago, we started this business of putting the public hearings at 7:30, but we could just say 7 o'clock and take things when we get to them, couldn't we? And avoid this, this comes up every now and then.
Yes,
So it's something to think about.
for future consideration, yes. So
Yes.
right now, since there's no one here prepared to address this issue, we will put off this continuation of the public hearing until we have someone prepared to speak to it. With that, let's move on to our action item agenda. First action item is to elect the board's representative to the Economic Development Commission. We had deferred this until we had filled the associate position. Our new associate, Ray Mead, has served in the past on the EDC. However, Ray communicated to me that he is not interested in representing the planning board on the EDC. So be happy to take any of the other board members as representing this board on the EDC. So any volunteers? I guess I could.
Did Prabhu do that at any time?
He did.
yes,
We can't do it anymore.
he did express recently he does not have time to do that this go around. If no one else wants to, I'm willing to, but I may not be attending a meeting until January or February. But
Yeah. Well, if you're willing, Justin, and
So moved.
do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded that Justin be designated as the board's representative to the Economic Development Commission. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we'll put this to a vote. Mr. Hassinger,
Aye.
Mr. Wood,
I
Mr. Delamole,
Aye.
and Mr. Robbins votes aye. Motion carried unanimously. Next action item is final action on the draft decision for the modification of the special permit and site plan approval at 232 Worcester Street, formerly known as 244 Worcester Street.
So this was the one that we had previously voted to allow you to basically pre-approve. Is that accurate, Mr. Robbins?
Yes.
Right.
Yes, and
So
I had reviewed the draft and suggested a few minor changes. What you see and what we have in front of us now is the final version, with one question remaining on my part, and that is under the project history and overview, bullet item 3. It refers to a plan that was received November of 2022, and the last sentence is stamped by the town clerk on November 20th, 2024.
Yes,
Is that accurate?
that's
2020?
accurate.
It
Yes.
is.
Yes, we saw this weird submission from November 2022 and realized that it hadn't been stamped in and wanted to document it accordingly in the decision. So we're covering all of our bases, but unfortunately we caught it and had to.
It looked odd, but
Yeah.
as long as that's accurate.
Yes, and that paperwork didn't. It appears to have been at the time. It didn't call for any plan changes. It was just a supplemental piece of information provided, by the applicant at the time. I don't think the board actually even requested it. It was just kind of an extra piece of information, but it was in our file. So I just want to always be as comprehensive as possible and include it.
So we're giving 1 year.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
that was our decision,
Yep.
our
Just gonna
agreement
move
at the
on to
time.
Yes. Okay.
So I guess a motion would be in order, a motion to approve the special permit with all the findings and conditions as drafted.
So moved.
Second, one discussion question just on the motion wording itself. Would it be better to say affirm, or does it really not matter? Affirm our decision from our last meeting.
It's fine.
Either way.
That works for
We
me.
often say affirmative findings.
If I may, Mr. Chair, I think the motion at the last meeting was, I think the language was specifically pre-approve, not like officially approve. So, I mean, I don't see a problem with using affirm, but typically we use
Yeah.
approve or deny. So,
And seeing as how the wording in the decision itself is the board voted to approve the special permit, let's go with approve,
okay.
to be
Works for me.
consistent with the wording in the decision. Any other discussion on the motion? Okay. Natalia's hand is raised.
So you did vote to grant, so you can approve, this just vote to approve the actual draft decision as it is written now. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Makes sense to me.
All right, any other discussion?
Hmm.
Hearing none, we'll put this to a vote. Mr. Hassinger,
Aye.
Mr. Wood,
Aye.
Mr. Delamole,
Aye.
and Mr. Robbins votes aye. The vote is 4 in favor and none against. 4 being in favor, it meets the required quantum of a vote for approval of a special permit. Alrighty, what's next? We have a action item C, the extension of the temporary certificate of occupancy for 130-134 Worcester Street. So where are we with that?
Sure. So I know Alan is here, but I am just going to give a really brief overview. If I can find the paper to do so in the piles upon files. Okay. So just so I think I've been keeping the board abreast of what we've been up to. But we went out to the site on the 12th, checked for compliance, decided that at the time, with confirmation from the building inspector, that this special permit and site plan approval is going to require a modification to meet some of the changing conditions that have come about since the original 2021 approval, namely modification of the fencing, changing plantings near the street line, redesigning the detention basin, and some of the other kind of minor kind of site specific conditions. There were some things that we decided to, as part of the original approval, discuss with Graves Engineering to deal with in spring 2025, which would be kind of what we've been saying before. Paving, namely, and then adjusting the pavement marking. So it's kind of a weird situation where a modification is required. In order to allow that modification to occur, there needs to be an extension of the temporary CO, but the applicant and potential applicant rather, I should say, has been working with the engineering team to craft an application for presentation to the board. And I'm hoping that all of these timelines will align nicely, and also the applicant will be able to renew and do what they need to do with conservation, because I did get a note from Concom today, just keeping us in the loop on their end, that their staff is advised to go forward, and the best way to do so is for the applicant to pursue closing out of their certificate of compliance, and then the applicant will then submit an as-built for the completed work, and during the process, we'll discuss with Concom further about how to handle these plantings, because the board may or may not be aware, this is in riverfront area, so the plantings are really important to preserve the integrity of that site. So that's my long-winded explanation, but Alan, I'll let you fill in the blanks for anything I missed.
Thank you everyone for having me again. Excuse me. You pretty much went over most of the items. We do have our engineer on with us as well in case we did have any further questions as it relates to that plan. As mentioned by Fiona, we did have both engineers meet on site, go over some of the items that came up during construction that needed to be addressed through modification of the site plan. It seemed every item was agreeable. So we're working on addressing those. As Fiona also mentioned, we did loop in conservation to get an idea of what was needed to get done on that end, whether we need to go forward with an NOI or just figure out a way to, I guess, close that out. The recommendation was to commence the process on the closing of it, and that way we may, by the time it gets them, they're familiar with what's going on in the back end of it with the site plan and the modification. To Fiona's point, again, we also wanted to make sure we hit the timeline so that we don't go through this process multiple times. So we're trying to do it so that we only come one time. We did actually get a preliminary revision of the modified plan per the instructions of the engineering recommendation from the town. So we're already looking at those now, but we're at this point just waiting to hear back and get some of that feedback from the engineering team themselves. So is that?
Mr. Chair, if I might just add, I just want to underscore the point that if we are pursuing a modification with planning board and Concom, I just want to always make sure that we're doing things kind of concurrently, because we don't want to have a situation where, and I'm sure Dave, you know this from your days on Concom, where Concom requests a plan adjustment for X and then planning board needs something done, something else done. We just want to make sure this is happening in unison. So hoping that, that spring 2025 time frame, at least the thought was on staff's, staff thought that that would be reasonable to be able to complete all of these milestones.
Yeah, and just to sort of reiterate, our goal here is your goal is to bring the project to completion to a point where the building inspector is able to issue a permanent certificate of occupancy.
Exactly.
And until that time, you're operating under a temporary CO, with basically this board's sort of approval or authorization of the temporary CO. And at this point, the temporary CO expires today.
Mm-hmm.
And we're now looking to extend that, and with the expectation that through the modification, the special permit modification process that will come to this board, and the review work that goes through conservation and everything else, that all the I's can be dotted and T's can be crossed. And what is was it like April of 25 is the recommended date, or is there a new recommendation? I know that was mentioned at one point.
Yeah, it was mentioned at one point, but I think, it's of course up to the board, but some timeline, around mid to late spring at the latest, I think is what we want to shoot for. We don't want to drag it out any more than we need to, but
No, and
I think April is suitable to be able to cover the pavement installation, plantings, and be able to cover everything. But if Alan thinks that that's not reasonable for some reason and wants to present that case to the board,
And I think we've got the majority of worked out. We just want to make sure that we get everything completed, like you said, at the same time, so that we don't go through the process multiple times, and just make sure that we hit everything on the engineering side based on the new revisions or modifications on the site plan.
Yeah, so there's not a lot of work left to be done on the site, but
Correct.
there is some,
Correct.
and it's, there's partly just a paperwork getting all the plans on record and getting whatever is left of the work to be done.
Right, exactly. Some of the items that we went through from the engineering perspective, like I said, are the most, I guess, laborious in terms of outside of the plantings. But the site is it's functioning per the engineering plan, so it's draining properly. There's proper stormwater control. It's doing what it's supposed to be doing. It's just we want to modify some things that we couldn't at the time address based on at the construction phase.
Now, Justin, your hand is up.
Yes, just a few minor points and a question, and at least one question. Fiona, is my understanding correct that generally extensions for a temporary CO are handled by the building department / zoning enforcement officer anyway, typically?
Yes, this
Okay.
has been a unique situation in that
Yep.
the prior building inspector, was comfortable with allowing the planning board to make the decision to extend, and now we're kind of stuck
Yep.
in this.
Yes. That was just a preface to how I'm thinking about this is, I know I previously said that I wouldn't really do a favorable vote on this if we got to this point and we were still, where we were. I'm seeing a lot of progress toward where we need to be, especially with what was discussed tonight. The current zoning enforcement officer seems comfortable with us doing an extension of a temporary CO. I'm okay with that. I would be willing to put some padding in if there's needed beyond the April date to like a June 1st. I don't know what the rest of the board thinks. That's just my current thinking, just to make sure it can get done in case there's a delay in getting us to a decision and getting things done. And the last thing I'd want to do is close down a business that's operating and is otherwise in compliance except for a few minor pieces, just because it's not all done yet. And that would make it even harder to get the thing complete, basically. So
Okay, so
that's my
Justin is suggesting June 1st. Is any other thoughts from the board, Greg or Bob?
I don't really like this, but exactly what are we voting? What motion are we looking to make?
I mean,
Fiona?
extend the temporary CO through whatever agreed upon date,
Well,
contingent on
But
modification submission.
we don't issue temporary COs, so we can't vote to extend it. You need something different language.
I think that is what we voted last time, though. You might have a point, though, still.
Yeah, it is sort of an unusual procedure here, but Fiona?
We've inherited this odd situation where now we are the decision makers, or the board is the decision makers. And the building
Where does it say that?
It doesn't, to your point, Bob, it doesn't. That's correct. But now, just based on the way that this process is unfolded, and I've gotten verification from Tracy that she's not going to move forward unless the board is comfortable moving forward. So
So perhaps the way to describe it is the building inspector has asked this board to, shall we say, authorize the building inspector to issue a temporary CO or to
yeah,
to say that the board is okay with the building inspector issuing the temporary CO.
So moved.
And Natalia's hand is up.
I'm sorry. I was going to suggest that we vote to recommend that the building inspector extend the temporary occupancy permit. I think that's what we did at one of these.
Okay. Okay. maybe I'll modify my move to recommend extend to the last day in May.
That sounds better than the board is okay with it. It's a slightly more formal language. So there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, moved and seconded that the board recommend that the building inspector extend the temporary certificate of occupancy to the last day in May. Discussion of the motion? Hearing none. Mr. Hassinger,
Aye.
Mr. Wood,
Aye.
Mr. Delamole,
Aye.
Mr. Robbins votes aye. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you, and hopefully, hopefully,
Very
we
well,
will-
here.
well,
I join.
hopefully we will see you back here for the modification.
Thank you very
And
much.
we'll get that paperwork done.
All right, thank you. Bye, Fiona.
And now, I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome our new associate member, Mr. Ray Mead, who was not able to join us precisely at 7, but,
No.
Welcome, Ray.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
A full board once again. Hooray.
Yes, and let me see here. It is almost.
Not quite.
No, almost, but not quite 7:30.
Correspondence. How about correspondence?
Fiona.
I may make a recommendation. I think we can probably get through what we need to with East Street in a few minutes, but it's up to you. I think they're just going to.
Yeah, so if East Street is going to be brief, at precisely 7:30, we will take that up.
Okay, just
And meanwhile, we have no bills, no minutes of previous meetings. Bob has mentioned correspondence. Is there anything in correspondence that caught anybody's eye? You know, there are a lot of pages in the correspondence from CMMPO, which Bob knows a lot about. But I don't know.
Yes.
Don't know that there's anything of particular note for us at this time. I guess
We
I'll
could
defer
do
staff.
reports from,
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, we'll put off staff report, but if we have any reports from planning board representatives on town committees and CMRPC,
I participated in the quarterly CMRPC meeting last week, and it was all about housing, and there were some very good slides presented showing where housing is and what's happening and looking forward. And I passed on copies to Fiona. I think there's some helpful stuff in there, and it may be useful also when we do some sort of presentations.
those are on the our project page website, the ADUs. So, thanks, Bob.
yeah, I think I took at least a quick look through the slides that you forwarded, Bob, and yeah, there's a lot of interesting material there.
Yeah, it's not just the whatever the ADU. It's about where housing is and where it's needed and where it's going to grow and all that kind of stuff. Because it's part of a much larger planning effort that's going on up there.
Okay, all right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It is now 7:30. And Fiona was suggesting we've got two public hearing continuations here, and we've got Prabhu, who has just joined us, and Prabhu's time here is limited. The East Street project, is that something we can dispose of within 5 minutes or so?
I believe we can get through that relatively quickly. My understanding, and I'll let the applicant's engineer confirm this, but I think it's just a brief update before requesting to continue to provide further information. So,
Hi, Norm.
Good evening. Good evening. Welcome, Ray. So, when we last met, I explained how my client would like to divide this lot into two lots. There's currently a house, two-family house, and a garage on this property. There are currently two driveways. One driveway crosses the brook, and it conforms with zoning. The other driveway is at the southern end of the property, and it violates one of our bylaws that says you are not allowed to have a driveway within 10 feet of your property line. So the driveway at the southern end of the property is non-conforming. So if I were to present an A&R to cut this property up into two lots, this board would be required to deny that application because one of the two driveways is non-conforming. So we come up with this idea to do a common driveway across that bridge. Now that bridge was rebuilt last summer. We had to apply with the Conservation Commission. There had been a bridge there for about 35, 40 years, but had been crushed by a heavy truck. So we designed a box culvert. Conservation approved that project. It was rebuilt last summer, and Conservation recently issued a certificate of compliance. And Graves did an inspection of that bridge, and Graves, Jeff Walsh from Graves Engineering inspected that bridge, and he's happy with the bridge. So when I explained this to you at the last public hearing, you wanted to hear from Graves Engineering. You hadn't heard from Graves Engineering yet on their technical review of this common driveway proposal. But now we have received a letter from Graves basically saying he has no comment. There's nothing wrong with it technically. There's also a letter on the file from the fire department saying that they have no comment. Now, your common driveway bylaw does give this board the option to require certain things. You could require curbing, you could require more than 2 inches of pavement. There are things that this board could require for this common driveway. What I'm about to suggest is that we meet at the site, look at the common driveway, and discuss what this board might need to be satisfied that this bridge over this driveway and this driveway over this bridge is adequate for a common driveway. So I would like to schedule a public hearing to do so. I'd like to also point out my client is willing to add 3 inches of asphalt to this. I don't know if he needs that. I mean, it had been asphalted. Recently he added asphalt grindings. I wished he hadn't done that because it was a nice clean pavement, but now he's added asphalt grindings. He's willing to add 3 inches of pavement, but I think we should meet at the site, take a good look at this bridge, and then decide what the board would like for any improvements that they might like to have this satisfy the board as a common driveway.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Norm, are they gonna take that garage and make a house out of it?
So, I don't like the foundation that's on that garage. We haven't really gone down that road yet, but I think that's what my client's thinking about doing. But I would more than likely design a new foundation for that, and that whole thing would come out.
So they are gonna put a house, that's the plan, is to put a house.
That's his
near the
plan. That's what
garage.
he'd like to do, is add a second house to this property.
Okay, so that's a retaining wall to Hayes's Pond also, back there. So, and anyway, I was just wondering, because I saw the plans and I'm looking at it and I'm going, you know, where is this second house other than the garage?
Yeah, there is a dam. This abuts Hayes Pond. Hayes Pond is part of this property. That garage backs up to that dam, so that would have to be looked at to make sure we don't impact that dam in any way. Yep.
Mr. Chair.
Sorry.
So, just in addition to what Norm said, just to kind of wrap it up, I think, you know, I'm not, and I've spoken to Norm about this, so it's not going to come to a surprise to him, but I am not satisfied with the plans yet. I want more, I want better compliance with section 1.3.3 of our requirements. I would like to have a confirmation of the thickness of the common driveway now. There hasn't been any coring or anything done yet, and I think what makes sense, and if through you, Mr. Chair, to the applicant's engineer, if we could talk about potentially or come to a consensus on having that done to make sure that the common driveway thickness is adequate and then do the site visit. It's something to consider. I just want to make sure that everything is, if we're waiting on more information after a site visit occurs, what is, kind of defeats the purpose.
Yeah.
So I spoke with Fiona today about this thickness of asphalt, thickness of gravel. I talked to my client. My client is willing to have us do a coring just to see what asphalt is there and what gravel is there. Maybe we should do two. One across the bridge and one halfway up the driveway as you go up that. Yeah. My client's willing to do that.
Yeah, that I think it sounds to me like that would be appropriate.
It's just,
Fiona?
just to, not to belabor the point, but like the regs as they're written, like it looks like there's like, I think the plan says like regrinds, but yeah, I'm just not, I just feel like we need to go out there and look.
Yeah, I think there's seems like there's a few details to kind of to work out between you and your client and the staff here.
So I could get that coring done, I believe, in 2 weeks' time. So maybe we could schedule a site walk, hopefully for the snow flies. Maybe we could schedule a site walk for, say, like the second week of December.
Did that make sense to you, Fiona? Any
Yeah.
comment? Any thoughts from the board? I mean, I would like to see this move forward as expeditiously as possible. Don't want to rush things, but I'd like to make sure that things are kind of done in an orderly manner, that the staff has the information they need to do their part of this. And I don't want the board to spend any more time on it than we have to, but yeah, I wouldn't mind going out there to take a look at it at an appropriate time once we have enough information.
Yeah, I can work with, I want Fire and Graves and myself, and if, we can have a representative from the board present if the board agrees to that. But yeah, I can make that timeline work.
There is one other issue I'd like to talk about, and that would be fire truck access. If this were a commercial site, fire truck access would be required. But where it's residential, and the furthest house away is going to be about 150 feet back from the street, I don't know if fire truck access is going to be required for these two houses. I mean, the fire truck could park in the street and put the fire out.
Yeah, but I don't off the top of my head remember what our common driveway regs say about.
It just says if it's commercial, you have to have fire truck access.
Fiona?
But in the past, we've had applications for common driveways where we've made sure that they conform and that the truck is able to navigate the length of the full common driveway. We've had fire comment on that as well. And I know that, the applicant has mentioned that fire didn't have any comments, but, that crossing is kind of nerve wracking, so.
Yeah, but it would probably be wise for fire to.
So the fire department said no comment, but I look at that bridge, there's a guardrail either side. I went out there today, I measured, it's 18.5 feet from face of guardrail to face of guardrail. And it's a 90-degree turn off the road. You're not going to get a big fire truck in there. You might get a small fire truck in there, but you're not going to get the hook and ladder in there. No way.
Yeah.
Would you need the hook and ladder in there? No.
No.
What's a hook and ladder?
No, you wouldn't need it in there. I'm just saying. But the normal turning radius we do is for the hook and ladder.
Yeah, I mean, right.
Well, the old one or the new one?
The new one.
All right. Well, I want to be keeping in mind that Prabhu has only got a limited time with us, and Prabhu, we'd like him to be able to participate and vote on the special permit that's following this. So, can we take it that that you will work with staff, coordinate the site visits, inform the board of when the site visits are going to take place, so the board has an opportunity to participate? And we'll plan on at least tentatively continuing this hearing to
Probably 4 weeks.
4 weeks.
Yep.
That
We
would be,
do have an attendee with the raised hand, Mr. Chair.
all right. That would be a continuation to December 23rd. We have, yeah. George Odie is got a hand raised on Zoom.
I think he pronounces it Audi.
Audi?
Yeah. Okay, sorry. How are you? Sorry, I was on mute.
Oh, that's Mr. Audi now.
Yes,
Can you guys hear me?
yes.
Yes.
So I just wanted, when we were putting in, address the boring situation, to the right of me, the two houses, the two duplexes, that used to be a big gravel pit. And when we were digging out the culvert, the engineering required us to dig it back. And then there's nothing but gravel there. And then, the history of that property was the Hayes trucking. So the pavement's uneven, but there's pavement on top of gravel a foot thick. I'm more than happy to get any borings done. He can, Norman can get them done. But just from putting in, just me knowing the history of that house being a paving company and they dump all their pavement, it's layers and layers of pavement over gravel. And other than that, that's all I wanted, just to address that. But if you guys would like the borings, we're more than happy to get them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right,
So I signed the request for continuance to the 23rd.
all right, so applicant has submitted a written request to continue this hearing to December 23rd at 7:30 PM.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
one thing I want to just call out as well that I saw in a letter in the correspondence in our record for this that I believe was Fiona wrote it, where the plans don't show where there is where it is just gravel or where it is pavement. So there is areas on this plan that is just gravel. We should be able to see that on the plan, in my mind. So that's something we should probably update before our 23rd if we can.
Everything that's shown as gray is paved.
That sounded different from what Mr. Audi just said, but if that's accurate, the planning member that does go there to the site visit should be fine.
It's all paved.
Yeah, I think Mr. Audi was talking more about what is underneath the current
Yeah.
pavement.
Okay.
He's saying the
Makes
parent
sense.
material of the earth is gravel.
Yeah. All right, so is there a motion to grant the applicant's request for continuance?
So moved. So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded that the
I can't say anything.
request for continuance be granted. Any discussion of the motion? Hearing none, Mr.
That's
Hassinger?
that's a continuance to the 23rd of December.
Yes. Any other discussion? Call for a vote. Mr. Hassinger?
Aye.
Mr. Wood?
Aye.
Mr. Delamole?
Aye.
And Mr. Venkatraman?
Aye.
Mr. Robbins votes aye. Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. Thank you. Stay well.
So, you know. Happy
Alrighty.
Thanksgiving, Norm.
We now have a continuation of a public hearing for the project at 12 Centennial Drive and other locations. We left the hearing open from last time for additional material be submitted for the record, and I believe that's all been done. And we have a draft decision. So the first of all, is there anything, well, anything we need to do before we close the public hearing?
I exchanged a couple of messages with Fiona today about the meaning of the reference to contingency in the money section. She may be able to help better than I can with that.
So, Mr. Chair, Bob is referring to the way that a couple of the conditions in the draft are phrased. And we can get into that because I think that was one of the highlighted in the green text that we need to review anyway. And I think the applicant has thoughts about that. Just to your point before about closing the public hearing before starting the draft decision, you know, it's totally up to the board if they want to close the public hearing and then discuss, or they want to keep it open. But we did receive 2 comments today, public comments. We actually received a lot of information today, which was was hard to kind of get everything together, but we were able to get everything up there, including you know, the applicant's suggestions for the board to review regarding the draft, a comment from the fire department that we were waiting for, that they're comfortable with the hydrant connections and the connections and hydrant locations, and then this is from the prior hearing, but the water district paperwork that was requested was uploaded, and then yeah, I mean, I think we should, a lot of the exhibit 56 and 57 rather had a lot of commentary in them. A good chunk of it was addressed throughout the public hearing process, but I just wanted to bring up the fact that we did receive some additional comments. I tried to stay on top of it up until probably 5:45 this evening, and then stopped checking. But in terms of if we're waiting for anything that would stop us from, or to stop the board rather from being able to close the public hearing, no. I think that we can proceed, and then we can start, you know, the board can get into the weeds about the draft language.
All right, Justin, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge Mr. Churchin's comments that I saw in the public comment message that they're Exhibit 58, that the water situation in town is certainly on top of mind for a lot of residents right now, and it's something that is a general concern and is one of my concerns. But that said, we have things in our record and documentation that explicitly says the water district has the capacity and willingness to service this location. And despite our concerns, at least my concern, I have to lean on what the professionals at the water district are saying in writing to us here. So that's something I want to just call out.
Bob?
Yeah. As to closing the hearing, I want to be sure that we've captured everything on the record that we need to capture to satisfy my question about what the contingency expression means and how it works and whether we've got it covered. Perhaps we want to have it on the record first before we close the hearing. I don't know, because I don't know the answers.
Let me suggest, Mr. Chairman, why don't we just leave the hearing open, go through the decision. If there's any other questions of the board, we'll get to that point, and if not, you can move to close the hearing and just vote on what you've hopefully completed at that point.
Anybody disagree with that? It keeps it simple. We'll just yeah. So if there's nothing else, let's dive into the decision.
Mr. Chair, so I'll pull up the draft, but as I mentioned, there was some suggested edits as well that were submitted for consideration. So I'm not sure how you prefer to proceed. If you want to go through the board's specific concerns, talk through those, then we can go and review the suggestions from the applicant and what they go from there.
Yeah. So perhaps we should sort of go through the decision from beginning to end, basically. Take any comments or suggestions the board has. When we get to, the applicant had some suggestions on some of the conditions, and we can, if we kind of go through from top to bottom, we can hit those as we go through. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there's a lot here. Maybe if anybody from the board has any particular comments on or suggestions or questions about any of the findings, really. Does anybody have anything on any of the findings?
Well, isn't that where, not sure whether it's in the findings or the conditions. I had the number. Finding 38 and finding 42 are the places that I was coming across that.
So if I might, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I think the substance of what Mr. Hassinger's comment may be, but correct me if I'm wrong, is during the course of our discussion with regard to the increased traffic mitigation contribution, there was discussion as to whether that would be an adequate amount, since that was in present day dollars and the work wouldn't be happening until perhaps 2025 or into 2026. And in response to that, Robert Michaud from MDM Transportation pointed out to the board that his order of magnitude, which is an exhibit in your record, that got to the total cost of the work of $750,000, included a 25% contingency for unforeseen conditions, changing conditions, and the like. And therefore, the applicant is relatively confident that the contribution will cover the entirety of the costs of design and the work in some fashion.
Okay, I guess that is one of the 2 or 3 possibilities that might come out to. I think maybe it should be expressed, explained that wherever the offer is documented, that it just say there about the 25%, not raise a question about whether that's a possibility of another 25%. You see what I mean? See, it says, which shall include. That doesn't, I think the average person down the road might be puzzled by the way that.
Yeah, I'll add, Bob, that was one of my things I caught when I was reading this too, is that it reads like the 625 plus 25% to me, and was not my understanding of what our discussion in the public hearing was so far. So,
yeah. I just assume not have to be stumbling over this 2 or 3 years down there, or 4 years down the road.
So
if we can just tweak the words a little bit.
So you're referring to condition B10 specifically on page 34?
That's C10, I think. Yeah, we're looking at C10 here.
Okay.
Yes, I would agree that wording is, that wording could be confused, or could be misunderstood. Yes, if earlier, sort of maybe at the first time in this decision that the 750,000 figure is mentioned, that's
probably back in finding 38.
I think that's finding 38 is where that's first mentioned.
Yeah.
And there it could be noted that.
Go ahead, yes.
Bob?
Say there that this includes. Say there that this includes.
Okay.
Or where you explain that cost was calculated. You say
this includes This includes a 25% contingency over the estimated cost of completion, or something like that.
And that would a reference right there to the exhibit in which that 750,000 is documented would be helpful.
Mm-hmm. With order of magnitude. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
Right.
Is the 625, that includes the 25%, so it's 481, is that what you're saying? Or is it 468, or is it 781,000?
The 750,000, which
Okay,
is the
so,
total
but-
cost.
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to get this straight. The 625,000 includes 25% contingency, which makes the base of that $468,000. Is that correct, or is the total 780, or is it 625 plus 25%?
No, there was an estimate of 750 total, and in here, we're splitting the contribution, 125 early for design, and then the remainder 625 later. But the 750 total includes the 25% contingency. So it's,
Yeah, they figured out the cost and then they added, what, 25% or something like that. And came up with 750.
So the cost is $468,000.
I'm not so sure we went through the process of taking the order of magnitude and breaking down design to construction. I think we came up with rough numbers as far as that, because it's all available for the same pool and never comes back to the applicant. So the contribution's the same, whether it's design work or construction work.
okay, so we're gonna, revise finding 38 to refer back to the order of magnitude estimate and to explain at that point that it includes 25% contingency. And then from there on, we're just talking the 750, splitting it into the 125 and then the 625. But we won't say contingency like here in C10 that we're looking at in the screen. Right, we can remove that language, which shall include a 25% contingency.
Exactly. Okay, I'm happy. Can move on.
Okay, so any other comments or questions about the findings? I think the meat of this really at this point is more in the conditions.
There are specific findings that still have to be made by you, which are highlighted in the decision. Just to point out, at some point you have to make those decisions.
Yes, we got, highlighted like will/will not, and the way we usually cover those is we in our motion, we will say make favorable findings, and so the selection of terms there is whatever is favorable.
That's fine.
So that's kind of routine for us.
Yep.
Mr. Chair, so
Yeah.
just, if the board, if there's anything in particular, like a particular finding that isn't favorable or that warrants more discussion, maybe just make sure that we confirm that that is or is not the case and then talk through that before we move on to the conditions.
The problem is that a lot of or several of our findings are stated in such a way that we should find no is the good thing. It won't disturb something or other. That's a finding that's favorable to the decision.
All right. Prabhu, your hand is up.
Hey, so I had to step out from my business meeting, and initially I planned for 20 minutes. It's past 30 minutes. I need to go back to that meeting. My sense is we are not making a decision tonight, right? We are going through we are reviewing the draft decision. If we are not making,
the intent was to complete work and vote on the decision tonight.
Okay. So if I drop off tonight, and then when we connect again, I can join, and at that point of time, I can review it offline, and then I can be ready for the decision making.
No, we're going to decide tonight. We're in the hearing now.
We are deciding tonight?
Yes. Yes, the intent is to complete the work on the draft decision tonight. And vote to approve it.
Okay. I'll be on mute. I'll continue.
Okay, well, hopefully we can get through this
I mean,
as quickly as we can, but
yeah, it seems like, and I don't want to speak for the board, but it seems like that the findings really aren't the issue other than what Bob discussed. It's tweaking the verbiage and the conditions. So if there isn't a specific finding that warrants more discussion, I think the board can.
yeah, unless anybody wants to discuss any of the other findings, let's move through the conditions. The draft decision had a number of things just highlighted as changes that had been made from the previous draft.
Yes, I thought this was a little bit clearer than Redline because sometimes Redline is hard to read. So a lot of it is kind of clarifying language. Some of it, for example, number 32 here was consolidating what was already agreed upon in the good neighbor commitments. Like a lot of it is just kind of those types of things, shortening this, making it clearer, refining. And then there's some ones that warrant more discussion that I think the applicant wants to talk to the board about. So unless there's, I think maybe we'll start with the board's concerns with these and then we can talk about the
Yep,
applicant's.
anything in, looking under the conditions category A, standard conditions. Anything before condition 30 that anybody in the board had to, because I'll go up to condition 30, the applicant had a suggested wording change, which was posted. My summary of that, or my read of that, was the applicant is proposing to strike the language that says failure to comply with the conditions of the decision will result in the termination of the lease and cause the decision to become null and void. And the applicant is suggesting that part, the termination of the lease, can cause the decision to be null and void. They're suggested striking that. It occurs to me to wonder whether it's really necessary to state that within the decision, because just as part of the normal enforcement of the decision, I'm assuming that, I'm guessing that even without those words in the decision is still enforceable by the zoning enforcement officer. So, did you have any, I think it was your suggestion probably to
No,
strike those
that's
words.
exactly right. The decision is enforceable, as every decision of this board is, by the building inspector. This board has the power to rescind and revoke approval under certain circumstances and after a public hearing. What's in the lease is kind of a private party thing, really doesn't belong in a public decision. So I think the changes we have, I don't think change anything, which is the important component of the condition, is that any tenant of the property be notified of the conditions of approval and be obligated to comply with those conditions. And I can assure you that is part of the agreement right now. So I don't think the tenor of the condition is in question, more just the specifics.
Right.
So that's the only one we had.
Anybody on the board have a comment on that? I think with that understanding, I was overall comfortable with the suggested wording change.
Okay.
I do see Prabhu's hand up.
Prabhu may have left his hand up.
Yeah, I never lowered it down.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right.
So
So let's moving down on to condition 32 here. There were some highlighted changes, which I think by and large we had talked about before. And the applicant does have one suggestion here. On item G, where the draft decision states that the applicant must require the use of electric-powered yard trucks during established quiet hours. And I think your suggestion is that that's not something that's the applicant is able to do.
we can't assure it in any fashion. It wasn't part of our proposal. It's kind of your good neighbor policy, which makes sense in the right location. It'll be a variety of different types of power that will be used over an extended period of time. recalling the sound study, you know, and the impact of that, and the fact that the sound wall was added as a result of the sound study. Any concern about yard trucks, I think, has been already incorporated into that.
Yeah.
So.
So given that this is not something that the applicant is capable of ensuring, my first thought is that if it's not something within the applicant's control, it's not clear that this can be an effective part of the decision. Fiona?
Just to clarify, this is kind of that's correct. The applicant's correct. This didn't come up during this specific application process. This is kind of a condition that we've had in prior decisions that have a similar use to this on site. So we left it in just for discussion, and I don't see from the staff's perspective, omitting it would be a problem because of the evidence provided. But, you know, I just wanted to, people might even be wondering why it's even in there. And Shrewsbury also has had this kind of standard language for warehouse and distribution uses in the past, so we just left it in, and the board could nix it if they wanted to.
Justin?
Yeah, so I'm in agreement with taking this out for the reasons that were stated with the sound study and everything else. That said, I do want to just nitpick one very minor thing you said, Mr. Chair, that even if the applicant says they can't meet something, if we feel that it's necessary as a board and it's in line with our decisions, we can still put it in the decision and require it. That's my opinion on it, but yes, we can take this out.
Yeah, if no one feels strongly about leaving it in, let's keep. And anything we can do to reduce the size of the decision, even by one sentence.
Yeah. The only thing is, if it's customary to have a provision like this, and we don't have one in this one, which is a big one, what is that going to mean in the future? Are we going to stop putting it in similar decisions?
Maybe a suggestion is we put a explicit finding that due to the noise mitigations on site, we are explicitly not requiring the typical good neighbor condition of this, just as a thought.
Let's do that.
Sounds like a plan. All right. The next thing on my list is continuing with, had some suggestions from the applicant and going to B, conditions to be met prior to the start of construction, and under condition 3 there, the applicant has proposed adding, my interpretation to that is adding a deadline for submission of plans following the pre-construction meeting. As it was worded in the draft decision, following the pre-construction meeting, prior to the commencement of work, applicant shall submit a final complete plan set, and the applicant's proposed making that within 45 days of the.
Yeah, and just the reasoning is that I know parties, today we're trying to organize the pre-construction meeting. The hope is to start construction or site work at the end of December. That doesn't leave a lot of time for the engineers to revise plans based upon the input they get at the pre-construction meeting. So just giving them some opportunity to do it in a reasonable period of time.
Yeah, and explicitly giving them 45 days rather than.
Right.
The timeline is left somewhat open in the way the decision was drafted. So.
But it precluded work until it was done. So.
I don't mind putting in a specific deadline.
Great, thank you.
And to the applicant, just to ask for myself on that, are we saying that the condition of prior to commencement of the main building would be disproportionate to your current expectations of construction timelines? Because my gut feeling is that you wouldn't be starting on the main building within the 45 days, but that's, again, my feeling. I didn't know if that's accurate.
That's through the chair. That's true depending on how you define work. And
okay,
rather than
fair.
get into parsing the term work, I figure we just work on a reasonable calendar.
Yep.
I can go with that.
So it's condition B. Because I'm seeing, I think it's technically supposed to be condition B4, right?
That one is,
No, that's,
This one's numbered incorrectly.
that was 3.
Okay,
Right now it says following pre-con meeting and prior to commencement of work.
okay,
The piece that would change.
okay.
Yep.
And then, but the reference to the 45 days was added to be included as part of B3. There, I did
Right.
see that down here, there's the column.
yeah, there was,
Separate 45 days.
there's the other 45 days, which
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay. Sorry. Yes, I'm getting ahead of myself. Sorry about
B3
that.
is 45 days, within 45 days after the pre-construction meeting, the revised plans are to be submitted.
Correct.
Yes.
And then the next one, which is item number 2 in the draft, but it's really 4.
Yes, sorry about that.
Then you look on, then 4 in the draft is 5, and so on. We don't need to quibble what, Fiona can fix the numbering.
This is the same issue with regard to just timing. If site clearing's hoping to occur within the next 35 days, then that doesn't leave enough time for the payment of the money before that, so.
Yep. Yep, so that's basically, it's within 45 days after the start of cycle. And I would put within 45 days and not 45 days, just, because if you just say 45 days, well,
Sure.
you get the money the ready the next day, but now you have to wait for 45 days. If you take that wording really literally, but
Sure.
yeah. Within 45 days.
The applicant's wording looks good to me.
Yeah. Okay. And moving on, I think we've got other changes that follow from our discussion at the last meeting. Going down to B10 here. We already talked about that phrase about the contingency, which we can remove from this because it only adds a little bit of confusion. But other than that, the applicant has suggested, I believe, two modifications to this. One is the applicant is proposing adding, where we drafted, the draft says upon receipt of certification of completion, the applicant is offering to say, well, or earlier at the applicant's discretion.
Right. And this all drives at the language that's later in the condition that talks about the completion of the work on a revised timeline if the contribution is not made by January of 26. We fully expect to make the contribution ahead of that and to be working with DPW on a joint schedule well ahead of that time.
So again, this is, giving the applicant a little bit more flexibility in timing the contribution.
And also DPW to make it,
Yeah.
actually then.
And then the other part of this is just to be explicit that this is for a contribution for signalization at the intersection. And I was comfortable with both of those suggestions.
That's the extent of our comments to the draft. We thought it was extremely well done. Ms. Coughlin should be congratulated.
Yep, and
Indeed.
I don't recall having had any other comments after reviewing the draft decision. Anybody from the board have any thoughts or comments?
I will make a motion that we close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion made and seconded that we close the public hearing. Fiona, you had something to say.
I had one suggestion of something very minor, but you can proceed with closing. We can discuss or whatever, however you want to do it. It's really minor.
Mr. Chair, we did have a hand go up just as I was making that motion. I don't know how you want to handle this.
All right, well, a motion has been made and seconded, and the motion is now open for discussion. Any discussion relative to the motion from the board?
Mr. Chair, yeah, I just, one thing that I will say, to align with, the motion is just, there was a, I would like to include, if it's amenable to the board, the future address change that may occur is processed as a minor modification. I don't believe there will need to be an address change on the Grafton side, but I'm not sure. I've been going back and forth with the town assessor about it, but I just at no point in that process want to have it more complicated than it needs to be. So like, my suggestion would be for the board to consider, including that language, just a notification to us or the board that they, the address has changed to whatever it needs to be. It'll probably be a non-issue, but in case it's not.
That would be a condition.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there was a condition for an addressing plan. I'll pull it up right now. Really quickly. And then I do know that.
Since a motion has not yet been made to approve the decision, so right now the motion on the floor is simply to close the public hearing.
This would be B 10 in the draft. Is right.
And Fiona's input is on the record of the hearing. Move the question.
Right, I will. Bob is moving the question, but that hasn't been seconded, but since the motion is on the floor, if there's no further discussion, we'll call for a vote on the motion to close the public hearing. Mr. Hassinger.
Aye.
Mr. Wood.
Aye.
Mr. Delamole.
Aye.
Mr. Venkatraman.
Aye.
Mr. Robbins votes aye. Motion carried unanimously.
How about if well, do we need motions? How do we say, go ahead with it, with the change that Fiona just mentioned,
Well,
or approve it?
I suspect a motion to let's see, a motion to grant the special permit site plan approval with all findings being made favorably, as we discussed what that means, with all the conditions as drafted as further modified by the discussion this evening.
And including Fiona's
Including
recommendation.
last point.
I'll move that.
I will second it.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion of that motion?
I have a very brief just point. Does any board member feel they want to vote separately on any findings or pieces of this decision individually? Doesn't look like it.
Okay, here is no further discussion. We'll put this to a vote. Mr. Hassinger?
Aye.
Mr. Wood?
Aye.
Mr. Delamole?
Aye.
Mr. Venkatraman?
Aye.
And Mr. Robbins votes aye. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you very much for Prabhu sticking with us, and
Yes, thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Night.
Good night.
All right, so
On behalf of the applicant, let me publicly thank the board for its cooperation. We go back to that joint meeting, which isn't regular practice. We appreciate that. We set a very aggressive schedule on this project some 14 months ago. I had the under. I didn't think we'd make it, but I lost that bet, so I'm glad we made it, and did that mostly because of your cooperation and Ms. Coughlin also. So on behalf of Prologis and United Parcel Service, thank you very much. We look forward to working with you in the future.
yeah, Thank you very much for all the time you put into this, and
Chair, if I could second that, thank y'all so much. No, really. I've come to a lot of meetings. I've sat here. We really do want to thank you from Pelagius and the way that we've been able to partner from the beginning. So thank you, Mark, and thank you, Fiona, for all the hard work on this as well, and you as well.
yeah, and my compliments to you and your team as well for a project of this size and scale and scope. This went through remarkably quickly, considering the size and scope and the complexity of a project that crosses the town boundary. You guys did a lot of good work.
Going on under the surface. Thanks again. Thank you. Enjoy your holiday. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, that just about brings us to the end of our agenda for the meeting. What we have left is a staff report.
Sure. All right. Now that we've ended this process with DPS, I have a lot more to report. That was what I was doing for a long time.
You have a lot more time on your hands too.
Yeah. Okay, so, all right, wrong paper. Way too many papers. So I'm gonna run through a few major things. So any board member, feel free to stop me whenever you want me to elaborate. So first off, some board members may recall some time ago we had worked with VHB on updating the subdivision rules and regulations to incorporate what's called low impact development principles. That kind of fell to the wayside because we were ahead of schedule with that. We're starting over again. Now that we have Jack, I am freeing up my time for this type of work and making sure that we can prioritize it, because we do have a schedule with VHB and a contract through 2027, but the sooner that we can update the subdivision regs, the better. Even though not lately, we've been in a drought, but many will recall last summer when we were inundated with stormwater constantly, and our subdivision regs could have been could be improved to be able to mitigate some of those issues. So that's being reinvigorated this week, and I restructured that contract to have VHB take a little bit of a stronger role in terms of incorporating the edits, because they were kind of waiting on me and then I was waiting on staff, and it was a lot of wait time. So I spoke with Brian Cizurko and DPW, and I said, if it's not an issue to you, we'll just have them be able to be a little bit more proactive about updating the document with comfort, and the board will be able to vet any changes that they make, of course, and then we'll have a public hearing on those eventual changes when they're ready. So that's that. This Wi-Fi hotspots project that Bob and Dave are working with me closely on is taking a lot longer than what I would like it to, but that's okay. I think these things, all good things, take time. So we're working with CMD to make sure that the hardware and the software talk to each other, and that the equipment makes sense. I've tried to loop in the TA's office a little bit more to help me kind of project manage this, because they are in more regular communication with Comtract, and they seem to be able to they'll be able to provide some additional staff assistance for me. It's challenging because being pulled in so many different places and trying to maintain concentration on this, but we're hoping to implement, we have ARPA funding for this. We have a municipal fiber grant for it that we got. We'll be able to cover the full cost. The cable committee has generously offered to provide any funding that we would need as additional assistance. So yeah, we're gonna really try and hit the ground running with that soon. Master Plan Working Group meeting next Monday at 7:00 on Zoom. Please attend if you can, or help spread the word. We have, just a gentle reminder, we have a master plan website. We have a Facebook page. We have all sorts of really cool, interesting things. This project is getting toward the end, but we still need to get a lot of public comment and help us build this plan out. It's a really important endeavor, and it's going to dictate major policy decisions for the next 10 to 20 years. So we really want people to stay in the know about it. So if you can come, that'd be great. We received our preliminary paperwork for zoning and for our zoning incentive payment associated with the 5 Millennium Drive 40R. So that's great. That for those board members who might not remember, who may not know, we get a payment upon approval of the zoning in a 40R district where 5 Millennium Drive is located. It's contingent upon, it's similar to the subsidized housing inventory in that it's contingent upon issuing building permits within a certain time frame. We believe it's 1 year, so it is exactly the same as, you know, the SHI for 40B units. So we're monitoring that. We haven't finalized all the paperwork yet, and we're waiting for some more guidance from the state. The money is supposed to go toward infrastructure improvements specifically. So I'm examining the possibility of using that money to help construct that ramp, because the ramp is a requirement in our paperwork from when the project was originally approved. So there's a ramp connecting the MBTA station to the project. And the whole point of the 40R zoning is to provide that connectivity. So I have, you know, this is just letting you all know no decisions have of course been made. It's just kind of floating it out there, and I'll probably bring this back in the next meeting and have some more consensus from the state about how they expect us to spend the money and what's eligible and what's not. So stay tuned for that. CMRPC is having another ADU peer-to-peer workshop. This time it'll be in person on December 10th. Location to be determined. I will keep everybody updated about that when I know. They're kind of driving the bus on it. I'm just helping from afar. FY26 operational budgeting is starting soon. I don't anticipate anything significantly different. I mean, with Jack on board and with wanting to make sure that Natalia and myself are able to get access to things that we need, it might be some requests for increases to our standard line items, but I don't think it'll be anything that is vastly different than what we've been allocated in the past. But I do want to speak to Mary and Evan about more educational opportunities, particularly for Natalia as she tries to grow in her assistant planner role. So, High Point settlement is coming to a close. I've been working with the Affordable Housing Trust Council and the Developers Council to complete the settlement checklist. It's complicated, but we're getting there. I think what we're waiting on some paperwork and some follow-up language from the developer. I need to request some municipal lien certificates, but that's really as far as my role goes. I'm waiting for more guidance from Kathleen O'Donnell, who is the trust counsel. I'll stop there unless we want me to keep going. I have a few other things, but it's a long list. It's boring.
Bob?
Dave, Fiona, you mentioned, you talked about the cable committee and helping with that project. Be aware that the exact details of how that would work are in flux as to who can do what. Select board is looking at reorganizing exactly who decides what, how, but just be aware that that's going on.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Bob. Okay. And I guess maybe one other thing that I should mention is we're finally coming into a little bit of a period where it's slightly dying down with applications, but I have been talking to a lot of people who are interested in developing their lots in all sorts of ways. And but Natalia and I did a quick review today, and we're anticipating at least 11 filings, I think, in the new year already. So that's just something, you know, it bobs and weaves, but it won't be it won't be this relaxed for long. So I think we're kind of also trying to be cognizant of the fact that that's going to be revving up. We've had a lot of people coming to development team meeting, a lot of developers wanting to meet with me and Tracy one-on-one and talk through what their options are, etc. So just something to be on the board's radar too. And that's it. That's all I got.
If I can, one quick question about the master plan. Does that go before town meeting, or how does that get approved?
That's a good question, Greg. The board approves that plan. It doesn't have to go
The
through town meeting.
the board approves it, but it can, at least in the past, there were references to, in some places they go to town meeting or wherever to join in with approving it and committing to it. What we could, when we get closer, we'll find if that looks like a good idea.
So I'm clear. The board meaning this board.
Yes.
Yes.
This board, it's in the law.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and implementing the plan will probably require going to town. When we get to that point, once the plan's finalized, if we need money for implementing some action items in the plan, we'll need to go to town meeting. Town meeting did approve the only town meeting vote pertaining to this master plan effort now was the approval to use capital funds, I believe, for a portion of the project.
Yeah, the master plan it's a bit of a, in a way, it's kind of a peculiar thing. It is, by law, it is the planning board's responsibility to adopt a master plan. Mm-hmm. No one else has a say in adopting the master plan. However, it is the implementation of the master plan that gets interesting, because master plan can be full of recommendations. The master plan that we did back in 2001 contained 195 unique recommendations. Some of them were duplicated for a total of, I think it was 228, but there were some duplicates in there. But I went through and eliminated duplicates, and there were 195 recommendations. Mm-hmm. But there was never any explicit effort to implement those recommendations. It did turn out that over the course of 20-some years, we ended up implementing or partially implementing about half of those recommendations. But it's in the implementation where recommendations, for example, could be to change some zoning. Obviously, that goes for a town meeting approval. Other recommendations may call for actions undertaken by various different boards and committees. It's really up to them to decide, we're actually going to do this. So adopting the master plan is one thing. Putting it into, making it have an actual impact on the town, that's where it gets, many of the recommendations will require town meeting votes of one kind or another, or actions by various boards. So we will be following up the master plan with some sort of an implementation strategy. We haven't yet nailed that down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but the point, I led that previous plan. It was a difficult process because of all sorts of things. But in the end, we never did. We had talked about going to town meeting, but we never did. The point is, if you go to town meeting and it adopts the plan or approves the plan, then you have a much better starting point, it seems to me, when you start saying about, okay, the town agreed to these things, now it's time to start voting money to do there, assigning people, whatever it takes. I think if we had gotten that the last time, we'd have been in better position to implement more.
I think a town meeting vote where the town meeting actually votes to adopt or support, or whatever terminology you want to use, the master plan, would have more potential impact than just the planning board's adoption of the plan.
Realistically, there's very limited situations where what's recommended in the master plan won't have to go. Like any zoning changes that are come out of the plan, requests for funds, etc. That's a lot of the time. It's town meeting gets input as well. So.
Any other questions, comments for Fiona, or anything else? Any other items which may lawfully come before the board this evening?
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we adjourn. Mr. Hassinger.
Aye.
Mr. Wood.
Aye.
Mr. Delamole.
Aye.
Mr. Robbins votes aye. Motion carried unanimously. We are adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.